Do not seek to be loved for your kindness. Seek to be indispensable for your absence. The sun is only worshipped because it sets, leaving the world in cold darkness. Reflections on Power. They always believed that power was out of their reach, as if it were a territory reserved only for those born with fortune, lineage, or influence. But Machiavelli taught that power is not a privilege, it is an art that can be learned, cultivated, and dominated. Women, just like all those who orbit around a charismatic figure, respond not only to what you do, but to what you project. If you know how to manipulate this image, if you know how to lead the invisible game played between the lines, they will inevitably beg for your attention, for your recognition, for your presence. Not because you begged, but because you became the irresistible magnet that attracts without asking. The first truth is simple. Power attracts more than beauty, more than charm, more than money. Power is the flame that hypnotizes even those who claim to despise it. That is why Machiavelli said it is better to be feared than loved, because fear generates respect, and respect generates obedience. But in the field of relationships, especially before women, this fear need not be of violence or brutality, but rather of mystery, of calculated coldness, of silent dominion. When you do not reveal yourself completely, when you leave room for imagination, you awaken in them an uncontrollable anxiety, a need to decipher what lies behind the mask. And in this search, they come closer and closer until they beg for answers, for attention, for proximity. The secret is discipline. The man who does not control himself is a slave to his impulses, and a slave never inspires true devotion. But the man who masters his gestures, his speech, his gaze, seems to transcend common banality. Imagine entering an environment and not launching into excessive words, nor trying desperately to please. Just being there, motionless like a statue, transmitting a security that few possess. Absence of haste transforms into power. The absence of neediness transforms into magnetism. They perceive the difference, even if subconsciously, and start to chase him, because they want to be the ones capable of breaking his indifference. Machiavelli insisted that the prince should be loved and feared, but above all, never despised. In the game of seduction, contempt arises when you place yourself below, when you give everything at once, when you beg for her attention. The man who begs loses. The man who positions himself as the prize, as the center around which others revolve, he is the one who makes them beg for him, because human desire is moved by the inaccessible. What is too easy, what is delivered without resistance, is worth nothing. What seems distant, what demands effort, becomes precious. And when you create this scarcity around yourself, inevitably they begin to dispute, begin to try to prove they are worthy of your gaze. There is a detail that many ignore. Women do not surrender to the man who talks the most, but to the one who listens with calculated attention, the one who observes, the one who does not react immediately. This silence is interpreted as depth, as intelligence, as something greater. When you speak little and act with precision, every gesture of yours becomes charged with value. Every word a sentence, every look a promise, and that is where fascination is born. They beg not because you shout, but because you are silent. Not because you offer everything, but because you offer crumbs with meaning. This is the Machiavellian economy of power. Give little so that it seems like a lot. Think of the court game where every smile, every hand movement, every tilt of the head was calculated. So it is with you. Do not live as if you were begging for attention. Live as if the world owed you an audience. Posture creates reality. Machiavelli understood that appearance often matters more than essence, because it is appearance that guides perceptions. If you appear great, even if you do not yet possess it completely, people will believe it, and the moment they believe, they will act as if it were real. This belief transforms into social truth. This is how leaders emerge. This is how kings are made. This is how common men become irresistible magnets. Women are no exception to the rule. They fall under the spell of he who projects inevitability. The flame of power needs to be fed by distance. Every time you refuse to be always available, every time you take time to respond, every time you disappear and return with more intensity, you feed in them the sensation of lack, of void, of urgency. The human heart is programmed to value what it can lose. If you are never absent, never create risk, never create doubt, then you never create true desire. But if you handle absence like a weapon, if you know when to vanish and when to return, you condition her to beg. Beg for your presence, for your approval, for your proximity. This is not cruelty, it is strategy. Power is not born of naive goodness, but of cold calculation. Machiavelli said that men judge more with their eyes than with their hands, because everyone sees, but few touch. Understand this. Your image, what is projected of you, matters more than your real essence. Become a spectacle, become a legend, become a rumor. If you can make them talk about you when you are not there, if you can plant doubts and curiosity, you have already won. They will beg, not because you asked, but because you built the myth that your presence is indispensable. The man who wishes to be begged for needs to comprehend the deeper psychology that moves desire. Machiavelli taught that whoever controls the imaginary controls behavior. This means the battle is not for logic, but for the hidden mind, for the images you plant in her memory. When you become a symbol, an archetype of strength, of mystery, and of dominion, she stops seeing you as just another man and starts seeing you as an inevitable destiny. And when a woman feels she has found something inevitable, she bows, begs, surrenders, because instinct speaks louder than reason. The secret is never to give what they expect exactly at the moment they desire it. If a woman expects affection, you offer distance. If she expects indifference, you offer a spark of attention. This contrast creates fissures in the mind, as if you were a puzzle impossible to solve. The human being is attracted by the challenge, by what they cannot dominate immediately. If you give yourself entirely, she is satisfied and moves on. But if you give only fragments, pieces carefully chosen, she feels obliged to chase you in search of the whole. And in this pursuit, the one who has the power is you. Machiavelli said, "A prince must know how to be a fox and a lion. Fox to recognize traps, lion to scare the wolves." In the field of relationships, this means being astute enough to perceive hidden intentions and fierce enough to impose impassable limits. When a woman realizes she cannot cross certain walls you have built, she learns to respect you. And respect is the base of lasting desire. For loving without respect is ephemeral passion, but loving and respecting is voluntary submission. They beg for that which they cannot violate, but which at the same time invites them close. There is also the power of silence. Few comprehend the strength of not responding immediately, of not reacting to every provocation, of not running to justify oneself. Silence makes her mind fill the void with fantasies, doubts, and anxieties. And every minute she does not know what you think is a minute she thinks more about you. The man who responds is always available, and the available is disposable. But the man who leaves room for mystery becomes unforgettable. It is in this space of uncertainty that she begins to beg for messages, for signs, for explanations, for any fragment that breaks the enigma you have become. What most do not understand is that this game is not about cheap manipulation, but about internal discipline. You need to master yourself before mastering others. The man who despairs, who reacts with anger or anxiety, who is shaken by jealousy, reveals weakness. And weakness will never be begged for, only tolerated for convenience. But the man who remains motionless like a rock, who smiles in the face of provocation, who does not lose himself in justifications, this one becomes unreachable. And the more unreachable, the more irresistible. Because the human being, and especially the woman moved by mystery, desires what she cannot possess completely. It is not about being cruel, but about being selective. The value of a diamond lies not only in its beauty, but in its rarity. If there were precious stones on every corner, no one would desire them. The same occurs with you. If you are everywhere, if you give your attention to everyone, if you distribute energy without criteria, you become common. But if you preserve yourself, if you appear little, if you offer attention like one offering gold, then every gesture of yours is amplified. Every look turns into a promise, every word a decree, and they beg for more because they will feel they never had enough. Machiavelli also said that the appearance of virtue can be more important than real virtue. In the game of power, it does not matter if you feel fear or insecurity, as long as you do not show it. The mask you wear is what determines how others react. If you appear calm, everyone will believe in your strength. If you appear abundant, everyone will believe in your wealth. If you appear authoritative, everyone will believe in your leadership. In the field of seduction, the same rule applies. It is not what you feel, but what you project. And by projecting greatness, you will inevitably create devotees. They beg, not because you convince them with arguments, but because you bewitched them with presence. The great irony is that they will believe they are free in their choice, when in truth they are trapped in the web you wove. The woman who begs does not know she begs. She believes she acts by her own will, when in reality she is reacting to the invisible triggers you control. And the supreme power is precisely this: to lead without them perceiving they are being led, to make them beg without them knowing it was you who planned every detail that brought them to that point. It is the silent victory that Machiavelli considered the noblest. Therefore, never rush to reveal everything. Haste is the enemy of power. Time is your weapon. Waiting is your fortress. The longer you sustain the mystery, the stronger her fall will be. The human mind is a slave to that which is incomplete. That is why unfinished stories keep echoing, why interrupted songs continue in memory, why unfulfilled desires transform into obsession. Make her your unfinished story, your interrupted music, your unconsummated desire. Then she will beg to hear the ending, to know the next note, to live that which you have not yet delivered. Machiavelli understood that human thirst is not only for pleasure, but for meaning, and it is precisely there that many fail. They offer immediate, superficial, easy pleasure, forgetting that true power lies in becoming a symbol. When you become the representation of something greater, of strength, of mystery, of ambition, or of dominion, you come to occupy a much deeper psychological space. The woman stops seeing you as simple company and starts associating you with a promise of greatness. And whoever connects to this promise is not content with little, begs for more, for continuity, and for fusion. You need to create the invisible theater. Every word of yours, every absence, every appearance must be thought of as a scene movement. It is not false theater, but strategic theater, because life is perceived as narrative, and every human being seeks meaning in stories. When you conduct this story in a way that always leaves her in suspense, she becomes the character of your plot. And when a woman enters a narrative conducted by you, she is no longer the owner of her own steps. She begs for the next chapter, begs for the next revelation, begs for that which is still hidden behind the curtain. Her mind needs to believe that you are a rare opportunity, that any carelessness could mean definitive loss. Machiavelli said that men in general judge by immediate appearances and are impressed more by the impact of the moment than by lasting truth. This means you do not need to be perfect, but seem inevitable. If you enter an environment and your posture is erect, your gaze firm, your silence calculated, the immediate impact is of someone unshakable. And this impact is sufficient to plant the seed of submission. The rest, time takes care of reinforcing. Women beg for the one who seems firmer than any storm. But do not be mistaken. Begging is not just falling at your feet. Begging can be seeking your approval in small gestures. It can be trying to extract a smile from you. It can be competing with others for your attention. It can be getting restless when you do not appear. Begging is her soul bowing, even when her mouth feigns pride. It is her mind consuming itself in unanswered questions. Why did he say nothing? Why did he not answer? Is he with another? Am I not enough? This silent torture is your greatest ally, not because you want to make her suffer, but because it is precisely this imbalance that binds, that forces her to seek in you the relief for the anxiety you yourself created. Discipline is the wall that sustains this power. Impulse destroys. Patience builds. The common man reacts to praise with euphoria and to rejection with despair. The man who masters himself always reacts with balance, as if nothing could deviate his course. This balance transmits a clear message. You do not depend on anyone. And independence is the most seductive characteristic because it reveals abundance. Whoever does not depend, whoever does not bow, whoever does not beg, this one is seen as superior, and that which is superior is inevitably begged for. Machiavelli advised princes to keep subjects always in expectation, without ever delivering total security. The same applies here. The woman must feel she has you for moments, but never entirely. She must taste crumbs of proximity, and immediately afterward feel the cold of distance. This dance of heat and ice creates dependence. Her body gets used to the pleasure of your presence, and when you withdraw this pleasure, the void becomes unbearable. To fill this void, she throws herself at you with more strength, begs for more contact, begs for more recognition. It is the logic of abstinence applied to human desire. The key lies in alternating predictability with surprise. If you are totally unpredictable, it becomes chaos, and chaos generates fear. If you are totally predictable, it becomes boredom, and boredom generates contempt. But if you know how to balance moments of constancy with unexpected explosions, you dominate the rhythm. She never knows when the next gesture, the next word, the next appearance will come. And the unknown is the greatest food for the female mind. The unknown keeps her awake, alert, addicted, begging, without admitting, for the next impact that only you can offer. It is also necessary to comprehend the power of emotional scarcity. The man who distributes declarations, compliments, and vows at all times becomes empty. But the man who speaks little, who compliments rarely, who keeps silence most of the time, transforms every word into a relic. When you, amidst the silence, release a brief compliment, that explodes like gold amidst darkness, and she begs for more, because she feels that every crumb is a treasure. You become the judge, the oracle, the one who decides when and how she will be validated. And in this game, the power is all in your hands. What history shows is that kings, leaders, and conquerors have always been begged for, not only because they held wealth, but because they held an aura. It is the aura that drags crowds, not the gold itself. It is the aura that generates devotion, not just victories. The man who wishes to be begged for must work on this aura as if it were his invisible armor. This aura is born of discipline, of scarcity, of silence, of posture, and above all, of the conviction that you do not need anything, but that others need you. When a woman feels this, she cannot resist. She may even feign pride, but inside, she begs for a space in your attention. The power of Machiavelli lay not in theatrical gestures, but in understanding the human soul and knowing how to manipulate it. You do not need to be cruel, just be inevitable. You do not need to ask for anything, just withdraw at the right moment. You do not need to beg, just remain firm when everyone falters. This contrast creates the myth, and before the myth, even the haughtiest of women bows, begging not for the man, but for the symbol he has become. The supreme power lies not in possessing, but in being possessed in the imagination of others. It is when your presence invades her thoughts without permission, when your silence echoes louder than words, when absence becomes an even more crushing presence. Machiavelli understood that the governed should constantly feel the invisible hand of the prince, even when he was not there. So it is in seduction. The woman needs to feel you even in the void, needs to dream of you even in the silence, needs to beg for what is not visible. It is at this point that you stop being a man and transform into destiny. The fatal error is believing you need to constantly prove your value. He who justifies himself too much already places himself in a position of inferiority. True power is silent conviction. The man who does not need to convince because he has already become inevitable. If she feels she needs to dispute your attention, if she feels she needs to decipher the enigma you represent, if she feels she needs to deserve every crumb of your approval, then the battle is already won. She begs not on her knees, but with every anxious look, with every nervous gesture, with every attempt to extract from you that which you control with an iron fist. Scarcity. Life is an arena of invisible disputes. Machiavelli said that the prudent man must mold himself according to the winds of fortune, but never stop steering the helm. It means you cannot lose yourself in her emotions. You cannot be dragged by storms of passion, jealousy, or pride. You must remain like the unshakable captain, the one who knows where he is going, regardless of the waves. This posture of command generates a type of confidence that no woman resists. Because deep down, the female desire is for the man who knows how to lead. When you lead with firmness, she begs not only for you, but for the relief of letting herself be guided. But do not confuse firmness with brutality. Violence pushes away. Magnetic coldness attracts. Machiavelli taught that it is better to be feared than loved. But the true master knows how to balance both. In the intimate field, fear is born of mystery, and love is born of small concessions. A gentle word in the middle of long silences, an unexpected gesture in the middle of indifference. This contrast creates addiction. She feels fear of losing, but at the same time warms herself with the rare flame you offer. And so, she begs for the next gesture, for the next smile, for the next touch. She begs because she cannot control the rhythm you impose. All this requires that you understand a truth many reject. Desire is not born of abundance, but of lack. It is lack that generates search. It is absence that generates movement. Power lies in controlling access, in being a source that never flows entirely, but always promises more. It is the power of the sacred source that never runs dry, but never surrenders all at once. Upon realizing this, the woman finds herself in eternal pilgrimage in your direction. She begs, not because you ask, but because she cannot free herself from the promise of completeness you represent. Machiavelli also said that men are ungrateful, fickle, and self-interested, and for this reason the prince must always be suspicious. In the same way, never surrender your essence to a single woman, because the instant you become predictable and dependent, you lose your aura. The wise prince distributes rewards and punishments according to the convenience of his authority. You must do the same. Distribute proximity and distance as it strengthens your position. Never out of neediness, never out of fear, only out of strategy. Thus, even if one woman leaves, another will occupy the space attracted by the same aura. Power depends not on one, but on you. The apex of this game is when she convinces herself she was the chosen one, when she believes she won an impossible challenge, because the human being values most that which demands effort. When you make a woman feel she needed to conquer your attention, that she needed to prove herself, that she needed to fight against others, she clings to you as if you were a rare trophy. At this point, begging stops being just desire. It becomes devotion. A devotion that is not born of goodness, but of the scarcity of mystery and silent authority. The man who masters this art never rushes. He knows that everything is a question of time, that true power matures like fruit, and when the right time comes, he harvests not only bodies, but souls. The woman who begs does not surrender only physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. She bends before the myth you built, and the myth is stronger than any argument, more irresistible than any beauty, more than any passing passion. In the end, Machiavelli's advice echoes. Do not be just a man, be a prince. Do not be just a presence, be a legend. Do not be just an option, be destiny. Because when you become inevitable, when you become an archetype of power and mystery, it is not you who begs, it is them. They beg for every second, for every word, for every sign. They beg because before you there is no choice. And the supreme power lies precisely there, in never needing to ask, because everyone is already willing to give everything.